Hey, welcome back to the SPL week number 2, day number 1. And what we just saw, Gore Miser, was a barn burner between Radiance and the United, and we figured it would be as much, of course. And another good matchup here, but before we get there, we need to take a second to talk about Maxonomic, of course, our chair sponsor here for the SPL. Gore, everyone is spending a lot of time in their seats nowadays. Now is a great time to jump in. $50 off using code SMITEMAX. You can customize it, gamer tag, logo, the whole shebang. Go to needforseatusa.com, apply the code SMITEMAX, and hey, maybe no better time to invest in a more comfortable seat. Gore, I know that you're maybe one who's ready for that investment.
So Maxonomic chairs, chat. I don't know how many of you will remember the name Hand of the Gods, but back when we were doing competitions for this, 2 years ago now, there were days where myself and La Tigress, while she was here, would be sitting in Maxonomic chairs for 12 hours, and I can tell you, there's not a lot of chairs that can keep you comfortable for 12 hours, but that one somehow managed to do it. Even this one doesn't do it for me. So I'm still thoroughly impressed with the fact that I was able to be comfortable for that amount of time during a broadcast, and I think that's something that is going to stay with me and always make me remember that brand for the rest of my life.
That's high praise from a man who pushed those chairs to their limit. 12-hour Hand of the Gods days. Let's look at the schedule and what we've seen so far today. 2-0 for Radiance in set number 1. Maybe surprising some people, but the community at large, 85% of the community, as a matter of fact, had Radiance winning that one. Of course, that means we move into Renegades up against Team Rival here. And Gore, this second matchup of the day, two teams still searching for that first win, as you'll see reflected in the standings here in just a moment. And I think a lot of people will give Rival the edge here in getting their first win in the SPL.
Yeah, that's the easiest and safest bet here should be Rival, right? This is a matchup that, in my mind, screams Rival more than anything. And it's one of those things, they lost to United last week, so that's a matchup that you kind of have to look at as being maybe more on par, maybe something went wrong with Rival, maybe United just had a really, really good weekend, right? But Renegades right now, they're in that fresh formations area where they're trying to get that team synergy built up. They're bringing in some new blood. We've got awesome Jake 408 in the league, and I will say, even though they are in that area where they shouldn't be taking a lot of games, and you kind of expect it to have a warm-up couple of weeks before we start seeing them give people a lot of trouble, last week they pushed SSG to the limit and they kept them on the ropes. So I'm expecting a lot in this next match.
And I think the two questions, I always like having these questions to kind of look at for either team moving into these matchups. My question for Rival is, did E-United just look that good in week 1? Or is it a slightly weaker Rival from what we saw towards the end of last season of the SPL? And I think this matchup up against the Renegades is going to be a good opportunity for that question to get answered.
And I honestly think that we're in a position, specifically with Rival. Again, this is a team that looked dominant for pretty much all of last year, was able to make a run through Worlds up until second. And then the only thing that they have done for this year that makes the big difference, they added the World's MVP to their roster. So having Sam for Soccer, I think, come through in the jungle, having someone at the helm like PBM, who has been, I would argue, one of the foremost, strategists in SMITE, one of the best supports that we've seen in SMITE in terms of the history. So it's a very historied team, a very successful historied team and org. So you got to look at them, especially at their online, or I guess their LAN season last time while we were going through the regular season, and they are a force to be reckoned with. Rival is not a team to glance over at any given time. Even though they are down with that one loss from last week, I think it's just going to be maybe a little bit of warm-up period before we see them kind of ramp off the same way we did last year.
And I think it is important to note that while they bring in Sam, the world's MVP, not all else remained even there in the Rival lineup. Of course, the other 4 members still the same, but some role swaps maybe in there. CaptainTwig moving over to the mid lane. So it's a new look and maybe some growing pains for Rival. But I imagine that PandaCat won't be too worried about those. We sat him down for an interview to get his thoughts before this matchup.
All right, joined now by PandaCat, the ADC for Team Rival. Panda, does it feel ADC for Team Rival?
Feels like I'm right at home, to be honest. Not for Team Rival, but the ADC position for sure.
Sure, makes sense. Obviously, Week 1 doesn't get off to the start that you guys wanted in the SPL in Season 7, but was the team really down about that? Were you guys able to bounce back?
And I think the large gist of a lot of that interview is that, actually kind of what I touched on before jumping into that, is that though there are some role swaps, the team still does, I think, feel largely comfortable, and I expect this to be a good barometer for this rival team.
And this is going to be like this is the hit or miss match, right? Like this is the one where you have to come in and knock it out of the park just to kind of ground yourself, because Renegades are more than likely the most vulnerable team up against you, other than maybe Obey and Sanguine. And based on what we saw last week, I don't know if you can count Sanguine out in some of these matches. So this is going to be a good one. It's like a heat check for Rival, but at the same time, it's also a little bit of a heat check for Renegades. I feel
agree.
like they could show up big. Again, just based on the fact that they were able to kind of keep SSG against the ropes. There was never a period of time where it was like, oh man, Renegades are winning. But the fact that they made it so difficult for Space Station makes me have a little bit more hope in where they're going.
Yeah, I think that Renegades and Rival, and kind of last thoughts on their Week 1, it's the same outcome, both lose 0-2, but kind of a different vibe maybe for both. Neither team likes losing, of course, but Renegades maybe feel a little bit better. I mean, outperforming expectations may be a way to look at it. We'll just have to wait and see how these teams perform here in week number 2. Trying to go back to even in the standings and avoid 0-2. Renegades going to lock in Sobek, though, first overall here, Gormizer. A god that has started to see a lot of play and makes big impacts on the games in which we see it.
And honestly, that must be the only reason I can see him going up that high, is just how big of an impact he can have on an individual team fight, or what you have in lane as well. Good ganks, and there is an amount, like they touched on it during the last set, the casters did aggro had mentioned, that you can have Sobek kind of flex over into the solo lane, and honestly, with a Xing Shin here, that might still be a solo lane Sobek, and that kind of helps him out. A lot of people, one of the things that's kind of hidden in his kit is that he has 50% anti-heal. It's just very similar to Bacchus Burp. It's kind of hidden in there, but both of them have a 50% anti-heal on their 3, which when you're trying to deal with someone who's going to sustain as much as a solo laner, it's a pretty nice way to help deal with that and try and win a trade.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's different teams, different set, but same mid lane matchup here as Merlin and Raijin will get run back one more time here today. Hu Yi falls to the second round of bans for Rival. I think worth noting that Odin was banned out by Rival, a god that largely went by the wayside in set number 1, but Rival still see him as a large enough threat to take away.
Yeah, it's one of the weird things. We saw him be so potent for like 3 weeks, and then, well, I guess a couple of nerfs did come through, and it kind of knocked him right out of the running. A lot of teams don't tend to run him as much, but I do still think he has the potential for damage as well as a lot of control. That range stun is not something to scoff at. Again, if you're looking at an aggressive duo lane, Odin can do it.
Oh, Gore, there is a little bit of jungle ban over on Rival's side, but that opens the door for a Pele here. The first time we'll see her in the SPL. What are your expectations for Pele, piloted by Lasbra over there for the Renegades?
Man, I love Pele, and I love what she can contribute to a fight, but I just don't know how well she's going to keep up with the Thor on the other side. That's realistically where my mind goes, or the Serqet on the other side, whichever one of them happens to be running around in the jungle. But I'm looking at it as Thor being like her counter matchup, and he's just going to be more aggressive. He's going to be more in the fight. She has to go huge to make this work.
Well, Gore, these are two teams looking for their first win in the SPL. Let's get it underway.
Thanks, Dulcin and Gore. Those guys seem comfortable, huh? Like they've been with us all along. It's Finch and Mifflin moving into game number 1. Renegades up against Rival. And Mifflin, they talked a little bit about how even though both these teams lost last week, they were different feels. And I think that's a great point for Dulcin. It just goes to show that Renegade's a team that can lose, and people think they're on the up, and that when Rival lose, it feels like they're on the downtrend. I think this week will normalize that a bit, but it's just an indication of the different spot these two squads are in.
Yeah, it's truly about expectations, right? We expect such great things from Rival. PBM, as they said, such a veteran leader. But Renegades did put up a good fight against SSG, who is for my money, the fan favorite in this league. So if they can bring a similar performance this week, maybe it's not going to be the conversation that Renegades is on the up so much as they are just up.
Well, it's going to be the Serqet support for PBM. I think Rival top pick this in the picks and ban phase. And with no one else particularly tanky on the squad, they might be hurting a bit for frontline. Vamana can be beefy, but I just worry a bit about Rival as this game goes on and maybe them struggling a bit in that frontline department. Meanwhile, Renegades have plenty, right? Awesome Jake on the Xing Chen, SOT, SoloOrTroll is on that Sobek over there in the short lane as well. That is plenty of beef that they're going to try and chew through on the side of Rival.
Speaking of Rival's draft, I'm also worried about their late game engagement. fineokay can go into that giant form and try and walk down an enemy mage, but it seems to me that the majority of their engagement is based around Sanford Soccer on this Thor. If Anvil of Dawn doesn't come in big, it's not going to be very easy for PBM to play a similar frontline engagement role that we are used to seeing from him. So they are really contingent on the initial engagement and that Thor ult.
Yeah, and you've talked to me about it before. You rarely want Thor to be the first one in, as a red buff invade appears to be successful. PBM makes it work. Deathbane pretty hard to out-secure in the early game. But it's like you rarely want that to kind of be the first thing in. It is rather readable, you know, if you're kind of able to look up into the sky and time when he's coming down, and it can be avoided. And I think that's going to be a problem for them. It's not just this sort of lack of frontline, but, you know, what's going to be their waves of initiation? How are they going to force this Renegade squad into bad spots? They've got some extra control tools with the Taiko drums from CaptainTwig. I don't think that should be overlooked. That can be really strong in these fights as well. But it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle.
Man, you know how to get me going. Ranting about junglers is just about my favorite thing to do. Thor ult is at its absolute best when it's following up a team fight. PBM seeing a little bit of aggression here, but he gets out a good amount of health to his name. But Thor ult, if you use it at the beginning of the fight, everyone's already looking at you in the sky. It's easy to set up for it. They can pre-beads the dunk, shut you down the second you land. But if you use Thor ult in the middle of a fight or towards the tail end of it to clean up a kill once the fight is split up, that's when you really see great returns. If the enemy team is distracted, it just makes it so much easier for you to optimize your play. Thor, not the best engagement tool, simply because you don't want to have your assassin be the dude who's surrounded by the entire team.
Agreed. So we'll have to see what Rival's plan is. Perhaps to try and get off to a great early start, because PolarBearMike is on this Serqet. And I feel like when Serqet was sort of at her heyday, what made her so potent was that she put out tons of damage, even though she was building tanky and she was hard to kill. She has a ton of control with the Cobra's Kiss and with her ultimate as well. So I wonder if that's what they're trying to get from. You still need power now to get a lot of that true damage out from her. You can't just get it for quite as free as you used to be able to. But I think the Serqet can still be a very viable sort of hybrid support pickup. What do you think PolarBearMike's really looking for here?
PBM is looking to hit level 5, as most players do at this point in the game. And the second we see that, I imagine we see him shift his focus towards the mid lane, maybe leave AMC to his own devices so he can farm up. But leaving AMC behind, again, is not the best option. Such a low mobility god is going to have a hard time sitting in that lane freely. I like what they're doing now, freezing the lane at their tower, trying to force Xwall into moving up. Their engagement at this point, Serqet's going to blow up just about anyone that she finds.
Agreed, man. Early game Serqet is still scary. I mean, at this point, she's barely built different than if she was even an assassin, right? It would just be the assassin's blade, and I guess maybe like a mace to start off with, but you're not that far off from early game regular Serqet value. I like this. They're freezing the wave here over in the long lane. And you talked a little bit about this in Muzen, how he might be a bit unsafe. I'm thinking that that's going to keep being true. I mean, they don't have a ton of options to peel. Again, they do have these sort of in-between options as Twig is forced out in middle lane, like the Taiko drums, like maybe a Thor wall or something like that, or a Cobra's Kiss, but it's just not quite what you might normally expect to try and keep an immobile hunter alive. I'm thinking PandaCat's strategy is going to be to get a lot of his damage off before he dies and maybe just accept it.
Yeah, PandaCat is definitely going to be on the back foot, especially considering Lasbra picked up Pele, something we don't see too often, but that's a huge amount of movement speed in your kit, as well as huge burst damage potential, and a ultimate that's going to be able to close the distance on this AMC. The second that Lasbra gets over there and AMC is left alone for the splittest of seconds, Lasbra's going to have some free food on his plate.
Yeah, maybe going to be looking to gobble up the B if he ends up getting left by himself. So I think Rival, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, I think, the more we break it down, right? It's not that Rival's draft is bad by any means. I just think it's really high execution, right? I love to talk about the margin for error relative to the other team's composition. I just think that Renegades have more room to be a little bit suboptimal, right? It feels like if Rival are going to make this composition work, they're going to have to play it nearly flawlessly at every stage of the game.
And it is off the back of that engagement, as we said. I mean, if you look at Renegades comp, they've got SOT able to engage out of the solo lane with his Sobek. Pluck's always going to be a fantastic tool. I know aggro loves that Sobek solo, but failing that, awesome Jake 408 is sitting himself on this Jingshen. Thor up.
Yeah, Sam for Soccer wants to come in and look for this gank, but can't quite find it. In fact, gets plucked back. That's SOT that grabbed him. The lights go out as a result of BaRRaCCuDDa as well, but still engaging his SOT. He's lurking in the waters. That's good damage from Sobek in the early game, as Lasbra somehow gotten PBM underneath the tower and finds him for first blood.
That's an easy first blood. I mean, inside the tier 2 tower, 5 minutes in. I know you're feeling confident as the early game Serqet, but that is a bit of an overextension. It does look like the blue buff is going to get stolen away. Rather, not stolen away, defended very well. I mean, Lasbra picking up that kill as well is going to make it easier for him to rotate in towards his AMC. Just getting your jungler that farm as quickly as possible is going to be very nice. The second that he gets Soul Eater online, which is pretty core on Pele, that's when you're going to really see that Lasbra's able to fight into just about anyone that walks his way.
He should be in a good spot, but don't you think that that kill for Renegades is really twofold in terms of how good it is? It's getting your Pele, who we talked about is going to be shutting down PandaCat, how you want your jungler ahead just now, how that's going to get her ahead, but it also shuts down PBM, who I think most of his value comes from this early to mid game, from having this extra assassin functionally on the map. And I think that kind of cuts into both of those. It's certainly not the end of this Serqet by any means. You still got plenty of value, but they're mitigating it some already with that great early game play.
Yeah, it's always risky to pick up these off-meta supports, these more damage-focused supports, because that role is already struggling to find farm. You are the least important person to get the farm on your team, so what you do get is needed, and you're picking a god that is really necessitated on that farm. They need to get those levels. Serqet's only going to get better with levels, and she's not itemizing towards her own strengths as a god. So shutting him down early is going to be huge. And now I don't imagine that we see Team Rival move into the enemy jungle for a long time. Yes, they still have this 300 gold lead despite First Blood going to Renegades, but it's not split up very well. It's all split between all of them. So what is it? 300 gold between 5 people is just about nothing.
Yeah, not going to be tremendously impactful at this point. This is a good wall from Sam. SOT locked off. Doesn't have Lurking in the Waters either. That's one of his best disengage tools with all that CC immunity in the slow. Still has Charge Prey, though. Makes it back to the Tier 1 tower. But this is all in service of the blue buff spawn here, Mifflin. They've cleared out all the space. Lasbra cannot hope to step in, and that is the blue buff stolen. And that's just clean from Team Rival. Poke out the solo laner, zone away the jungler, and you get the blue buff invade every time.
Yeah, that's so rough. I mean, the second throw is up, that the engagement's over. Now Lasbra, trying to get his back camps, loses his life on the back end of it. 1-for-1 is the slash line 7.5 minutes in. Team Rival, despite that rough start and that poor dive under the Tier 2 tower, still maintains this lead.
Yeah, they're still comfortable, and PBM does not seem deterred to me at all, despite that early spill that he ends up taking, which is the only way I think to play this Serqet support. You can't let a couple of early deaths throw you aside. I mean, look at some of Aurora's best Hercules games. I bet they started off not perfectly, right? But he's still able to turn those around. This Serqet, not too dissimilar, as they've controlled not only the blue, but it looks like Renegades have controlled the red. They've got 2 on their side, so the right side of the map favoring Rival, but it looks like Renegades doing a good job on this left side of the map.
I like the decision from Rival to focus on that solo side. Having the Sobek for Renegades means that they are going to lose out a little bit on what warrior damage could have come out from that lane. He's not going to be able to fight as well as a Vamana will be. Whereas on the other side, AMC is an incredibly unsafe god, so if you shift your focus over there, you're opening up PandaCat to more aggression, and you really just want him to hit level 20 as soon as possible. So shifting your focus towards that soul lane is going to facilitate PandaCat getting to that late as quickly as possible.
Yeah, plus he rushed Transcendence like right away, right? No boots or anything like that online there for him. So that makes me think he's not trying to fight right this second. He probably is going to want to wait till he has the boots online and get this stacking as soon as possible. So I think it's all cohesive from Rival, this early game strategy from them so far. And that you need PolarBearMike to be aggressive. That gets you to the point where CaptainTwig gets past Raijin somewhat lackluster early game and then has his monstrous late game. Then PandaCat's online. He's got all the extra movement speed, and he can be a bit hard to track down. I think it all makes sense, and it often does when Rival plays. It's like having a book gently read to you, like an audio book or something. It all just kind of makes sense, and you're liking where you're going, and that's always how Rival feels.
You kind of have to credit that to PBM. I mean, he is a great shot caller, but Rival still does have to be cognizant of the fact that they do have to play perfectly with the comp that they have drafted, and they do need this lead. Having that Thor in the early game is going to get his power spikes a little bit more quickly than Pele, as well as that Serqet is able to activate that second jungler role a little bit. But if you look at Renegades comp, the later this game goes, their team fight is going to be just better, as well as they have these hyper game light carries.
This is good work from Renegades, though, to force Sam into his ultimate. He got a bit aggressive into the jungle, looking to strip away some farm, and it cost him a bit of that map pressure you're just talking about, right? This is Thor's time. Thor doesn't have a super bad time of the game, right? Even late game, he's still plenty strong and can one-shot some kids, but this is where he feels really good, and they kind of mitigate that a little bit by forcing out the ultimate. I did want to point out his 3 sets of Talaria boots, though, from Team Rival. They are zooming around the map right now between the Serqet, the Thor, and the Vamana. But it's Renegade starting up the Gold Fury, and I mentioned that Rival are zooming. Well, they got to zoom over to the bank vault and make sure no one's stealing it. They get here in time. In fact, force Lasbra into his ultimate. Has to use that Volcanic Lightning just to disengage.
Yeah, that's a huge engagement tool loss now from Lasbra. That's the majority of his damage output, but Jake finds a sick ultimate.
Yeah, but CaptainTwig's doing a ton of damage. They do get some good return damage on him as well and force him back out. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about with this Raijin, man. He's already starting to swing. Has that Soul Gem as that second item on the backside of the Choose the Magi that's become so much more popular for these mages nowadays. I mean, look at Venenu. He's going with the Choose the Magi right into the Bancroft's Talon. And I know the life steal's a lot stronger now, but I worry that this might open you up a bit too much as some of those anti-heal items. They don't feel as bad to build as they used to. And if you build them against this draft, isn't it maybe worse than just the traditional mage build?
It might be, but anti-heal is so core now that it's going to come out no matter what. This lifesteal is going to get a little bit less value than it would have otherwise. Fortunately, however, with the new lifesteal items, Typhon's Fang as well, it's very easy to synergize in the mage build, and it's one of the cheaper build options they have. Mages traditionally have all these expensive items that they have to work on. Rival now looking at Gold Fury.
But Renegades take it away, Mifflin. At the last moment, they come in and grab it. Rival somehow can't confirm. I wonder if BaRRaCCuDDa's ultimate helped out with that a lot. They shut the lights off, and Rival just couldn't find the way to defend. That hurts. They were about to start really pulling away with this game. You can tell because now the gold is even at this point. So Rival right on the precipice of finding themselves a nice early lead.
Yeah, that's a real tearjerker for Rival, but the 408 comes in hot with the steal. Yes, BaRRaCCuDDa's ultimate was good there, but this wild card in Jake, something that we can't stop talking about, and he's showing now that he deserves this spot in the SPL. He's been playing lights out every time we see him, and it's continuing forward now, maintaining the gold deficit at around 200. The Rival's not pulling ahead despite having played the map so well. I mean, Jake just popping off.
Yeah, that's a big-time play from Renegades to even this game back up. Because, as you said, Rival weren't going to fly away with the lead like a cannon or anything, right? It wasn't going to be, like, quick. But they were whittling away with those continuous blue buff invades. Could be trouble, though, for Lasbra, but Pele, as you mentioned, so fast, she makes it out of there. So, since I mentioned that Rival weren't going to shoot off to a lead, mitigating it at all early is huge from Renegades. Getting that Gold Fury to not allow Rival to blast out of control here keeps them right in this game to where they might have a better team fight stage in a pretty substantial way with all this front line and then the damage to back it up.
Yeah, if I'm Renegades right now, I'm completely comfortable with the state of the game. Only 500 gold down. They're farming for the late. They have that fantastic team fight that Rival really doesn't in the late. Their comp is so pick-focused off the back of this Serqet and this Thor that the second there's a 5-man group, I'm concerned about how Rival's going to find a way in, especially with Lasbra diving to the backline so well, and Jake and SoloOrTroll going to be this completely unstoppable frontline tanks. It's going to be very difficult for them to find a way in and shut down Venenu, shut down BaRRaCCuDDa. But Team Rival right now have been doing a fantastic job of making sure that Lasbra is having a hard time finding his footing in the early. We see him getting bullied out in the jungle constantly.
More aggression from Team Rivals. They're here for the red buff spawn this time. Hammer puts a bunch of damage onto Venenu. Still haven't quite secured it. They got the buff itself. One last little small was left over, so PBM takes the red. You know, the more I think about this comp from Rival, I mean, we worry about their initiation, their team fight, but if they just kind of barrel over Renegades, I don't know how much all that matters, right? If they're just if they're just constantly diving Renegades and blowing up their backline before the fights can start, then they're in a really good spot. And so maybe that's the idea here, right? Use this double assassin and Vamana to just kind of force your way down Renegades and never give them a chance.
It is a very strong spear comp that they have formed around them.
Sure.
And it seems like Renegades are willing to cede everything in the early game. We don't see these concentrated defenses around their buffs. Blue buff gets contested, Renegades backs up. Red buff gets contested there, Renegades backs up. And it's going fine for them now, but you can't rely on these gold free steals constantly to keep you at this point of equilibrium insofar as gold. Eventually, you are going to have to start to fight in. we need Renegades to maybe dig their feet in, start to play around their tanks, start to maybe look for the aggression themselves. Renegades comp does have the more traditional frontline setup. However, when you're retreating the entire time, your frontliners aren't going to be able to do much.
When they are on that back foot in the early game. We talked about how it could potentially be the Typhon's Fang for these mage builds based on how they started, and it looks like that is going to be the call, at least for Twig here so far. And that doesn't really surprise me. It's the percent pen option that you want in that third slot. We used to see Soul Reaver in that slot, or Karen's Coin towards the start of the year, but now it's this Typhon's Fang, and I think that's what really enables this build, as Pyromancer's going to go down uncontested for Team Rival in the background. Renegades either didn't know or they just weren't in a position to try and stop.
Renegades should have certainly have known. If you see the ward coverage, it seems like, again, they're just willing to give up these small objectives. Eyes are set on the 40-minute mark for Renegades. It seems like they are completely comfortable seeding this early 100%. They have to be feeling comfortable knowing that Gold Fury is dead as well, so they can just return to farming now that all the easily attainable neutral objectives are dead.
Fine as he's the Colossal Fury. He was under some pressure in right as Lasbra showed some presence on that side of the map. And now that Rival have grabbed that first neutral objective, I think there's no excuse for Renegades to not be here for this next one and be ready for this Gold Fury. As another gank on a fineokay. This time, there is no Colossal Fury. He does use the dash to reposition. The ultimates come out from BaRRaCCuDDa as well, but Blink for Blink allows for fineokay to reposition. Should be safe now. Meanwhile, Rival stepping on the gas on the left-hand side. That's another buff invade. This time, it's the purple.
I like that call from Rival to try and find as much aggression as they can, knowing that Lasbra's on the solo side of the map. That's the majority of Renegade's fight potential right now. Venenu does have good damage output, but BaRRaCCuDDa's build isn't quite there yet, as well as AMC's damage output is just going to be higher. I do think it's fair to point out that Lasbra hasn't committed any resources shutting down AMC.
CaptainTwig, though, gets plucked. I thought he was at the Taiko drums, and yet he gets grabbed. And Venenu is the one that finds the kill. Sam Forsaka repositions with the hammer. He's back under the tower, but Renegades have suddenly chosen to put on some aggression. We thought they were waiting for 40 minutes, so they were just waiting for their moment.
That's exactly what we need to see as well. SOT rotates out of the solo lane, completely tanky, tanks the tower for him, and that's where the aggression can start. The second they decide to fight, that's when it's going to go good.
This is so big for them. Lasbra gets the kill in right. Meanwhile, Oni Fury certainly belongs to Renegades. That's their second Fury of the game and 2 picks that go unanswered. Renegades suddenly coming in hot with that big play there in mid. And that must have been right at the tail end of Taiko drums. I wish I'd seen it a bit sooner exactly how that ends up happening and Twig ends up getting caught. But that's such a big play that SOT makes. And last year, when SoloOrTroll came onto the scene kind of as the rookie, he started off with Splice. He didn't look great, but he came back in the second half of the year. He sort of had this resurgence, and there was so much talk around his ability to make plays, and just now makes a big one for Renegades.
He does, completely shattering Team Rival's backline, making it so hard for them to group up and fight around it. Renegades, I said that they were waiting for 40 minutes. I guess I was mistaken. Instead, they were aiming their shot at that Gold Fury, just really honing in on the scope, and it works out for them. What was a slight gold deficit is now a slight lead in favor of them, 500 gold, which is where you want to be, especially considering, as we've been saying the entire set, Team Rival did draft for this early game. They've got huge damage on the Serqet and the Thor, but they haven't been able to find that aggression that they're looking for. PBM's been having a rather quiet game so far, but now it looks like he's looking to get some poke damage around SOT, maybe get ready for this Pyromancer on its respawn. But Renegades are sitting exactly where they want to be, even or ahead.
Yeah, Renegades have got to be feeling comfortable, I'm thinking, at this point, especially with how well that fight went. And that's what I'm talking about with that frontline ability to sort of initiate, get underneath that tier 1 tower and set up for Venenu and BaRRaCCuDDa in that backline. You said that Barrow wasn't quite online, and that was about 4 minutes ago, but now that Devourer's Gauntlet is finished, he's sitting on the short sword, which I imagine he's going to be turning into Rage. That's a risky proposition. Nemean and Thorns are up for fineokay, but if Twig and PandaCat are going to be getting served up on a silver platter by SOT and Awesome Jake all day, then he can build crit if he wants to and just blow the backline up.
He absolutely can, and now he's going to have that decent 1v1 potential into AMC, who's such a hard guy to fight. But with these assassins on Rivals comp, Spectral Armor is not going to be that easy to pick up. It's going to slow down a lot of that initial tankiness that you need as these assassins, because your base stats aren't really leveraged that way, as well as they don't really have any other sources of crit from Renegades, so a Spectral Armor pickup isn't going to be the most valuable thing you could go for. So going crit here, I absolutely love, especially considering Xwall's got all that passive power as well. So even if he does take a slight power hit in his build, he's going to be critting hard.
fineokay gets the dash interrupted and plucked back in. That was good analysis too, Mifflin. I was on board for that one. Sounds like you're coming to your own there as well. It is going to be tough, right? Even if they get Spectral, it won't have as much value because they're not working with that same sort of HP and defense pool that these normal sort of tanks are working with. fineokay kind of the only one I think that can keep BaRRaCCuDDa in check in that way. So as long as BaRRa can kind of stay away from Fine to some extent, I think that this build path should be fine for him here in these next few engagements. As with the Pyromancer down and Gold Fury, we might not be seeing too many skirmishes, though SoloOrTroll in some trouble. Has PolarBearMike coming up over the wall, but can't step into the lurking in the waters. Rival grabbed the tier 1 tower, but now Awesome Jake blinking in, kind of alone, is getting some backup from Lasbra, who's lurking in the wings, finds 2 members, gets a late beads from PandaCat as well to follow up for it, maybe trying to prevent getting charged prayed out of it, but he still gets charged prayed. Now Lasbra comes in, Volcanic Lightning gobbles him up. The AMC had absolutely nowhere to go. It's trouble for fineokay as well, as he gets locked down the back. ForSoccer hits just about nothing with that ultimate. Can't find the hammer, does find the basic attack afterwards, at least gets the kill on the Lasbra, but now he's trying to fight up against 3, and Venenu gets another.
Renegades playing that engagement so well, and it's not quite over. PBM under some duress. That tier 1 tower should fall very easily. That was completely Jake turning that fight around. He got the beads off of AMC. He forced an early shell because Team Rival was just scared. I mean, if you're in a washing machine, I understand that you have to be scared there, but no one was there to follow up. The shell falls on deaf ears. No defense was gotten from it. And then immediately Lasbra on the back end rotates in and deals immense damage.
Well, fineokay is the only one here to try and defend. Does get the knockup for extra damage. Rival get the fire giant. Renegades can't confirm it. Somehow fineokay makes the play. That's why he had so many highlight reels last year. fineokay keeps getting it done somehow. He is in some trouble here on the back end. Manages to avoid the charge prey, but SoloOrTroll shuts him down, and Rival stem the bleeding here for a moment.
I mean, I often say you don't have to be a hero to win Smite, but when everyone this game is making heroic plays, Jake opens up the doors for Fire Giant in a truly heroic fashion, and then fineokay digs deep plus Ultra and says, you know what? I don't feel like losing here just quite yet. Steals away the Fire Giant. It was a bit of a misplay. I mean, Vamana's confirmed isn't that high. Renegades could have kept him out better, or maybe even just focused on burning out the Fire Giant. Instead, everything aligns, and fineokay looking all that much more heroic.
And I hate to say it, Mifflin, but this is almost exactly the time to the minute that Renegades make their mistakes. When they were last year, when it was Space Station, it was BaRRaCCuDDa's team, whenever it was, they would play phenomenal through these first 20 minutes, and then right around now, when the mid-game first breaks out, when the laning phase starts breaking down, and you got to rotate around as a team and make these calls, it felt like it would just slightly get away from it. It would hinge on these one plays that they couldn't quite execute, and it happens here again. I don't think Renegades are out of it by any means. In fact, I think that they were doing great to be ahead at this point, but they just had such a potential chance for a big momentum swing to clean up the map, and they've got to make sure their heads are still on straight. As Gold Fury low, Renegades confirm that one nicely. Awesome Jake pulls PandaCat back in. The charge prey is there too, and Lasbra gobbles up yet another one. That's the first kill in favor of Rival. They want more, but that's a big dunk from ForSoccer. Finds BaRRaCCuDDa first. The hammer comes through for big damage, and fineokay scatters everyone, sends them running. Has Awesome Jake low on the left, but so is SoloOrTroll. Rival have turned this fight around.
Yeah, unfortunately, Renegades, their heads were on their shoulders straight as you were worried about. They got that Gold Fury completely uncontested, but looking for the fight afterward when there's no true objective to fight for, and you know Thor's on the map. He's going to be able to close that distance so easily. Yes, you got the pick on PandaCat, which is fantastic, but you're fighting for an objective that isn't there anymore. The second they got the Gold Fury, I would have loved to see them disengage, spend that gold, maybe go back towards pushing those towers. Instead, they take a team fight that results in them, yes, getting a Gold Fury and a pick, but losing a tier 1 and tier 2 in your long lane as well. That's not a worth trade.
Lasbra aggressive, wants to get ForSoccer to make up for what was lost, and he has a really good chance. Shuts down the enemy jungler. I don't know why it took so long to remember what role Sam is, but shuts him down quite nicely and is able to reposition. And so Renegades still lose a lot there, right? Rival find the tier 2 tower and left. They get a couple kills, but Lasbra makes a play that evens up some of those losses a bit. Renegades still have the gold lead at this point. I know things are starting to feel like a little bit classic Renegades here, but they're still in position as fineokay is in trouble. Lasbra might be able to make another big play if he and SOT can lock down this Vamana. It's a killing spree for Lasbra.
Lasbra is playing out of his mind. Anywhere you
Yeah, he
expect
is.
him to be, anywhere he needs to be, he's there already. If I'm SoloOrTroll there, I'm not expecting Lasbra at my speed buff, especially after losing a team fight as Renegades did there. And he lost his life for it, SoloOrTroll that is. And then Lasbra immediately afterward rotates over to the gold for you to pick up another kill. This guy is playing absolutely hot, and that's what you need from your Pele. This is the hyper game light carry that you need. Level 20, 6-2, his build's online. He's going to blow up anyone that walks his way. It's going to be hard going for PandaCat going forward. Now, Pele is one of the few guys that can keep up with AMC, as well as the damage output is so good.
Now, PandaCat has done a good job of getting his damage off before he fell, so maybe things won't be too bad as this Tier 2 tower is going to crumble in favor of Renegades. I also have to point out that Lasbra was kind of the hard carry last week, too, wasn't he, for Renegades on that Unbots? It felt like they were living and dying by how well he was finding those Fear No Evils. And I think you want your jungler to be the engine for the team. You can speak to that more than me, Mifflin, but I don't think you can rely quite this much on them making those individual plays all the time.
You certainly shouldn't. It's a lot of pressure to put on a jungler who's already experiencing an immense amount of pressure just by nature of the role. But Lasbra playing absolutely out of his mind. Jake, however, might get picked out here.
Yeah, this is trouble. Jake's definitely going to die. It's just a question of how quickly Rival can do it and what do they do on the backside. So that was the Tier 1 tower in left that Renegades got, and then they dropped off. Fire Giant had fallen off. It'll be back up in 30 seconds. So Rival, even though they get the pick, they can back, regroup, and be around FG. But I think Renegades should be able to buy enough time for Jake to get back in and defend. I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world that he gets picked there, though obviously you don't want it.
Yeah, dying is almost never the preferable outcome, but BaRRaCCuDDa does a good job of using that time that Team Rival was in that left lane to get some ward coverage around this Fire Giant. Unfortunately, it won't amount to much now that they have to return to base. Team Rival should be able to get that defensive positioning around Fire, which I think is one of the most important things to do at this point. It's so much easier to defend it.
Well, this is going to be a problem. They won't have Awesome Jake here for it, and Rival are going to force the fight. Maybe that pick will come back to bite them. Mifflin is the Fire Giant down well below half, and Sam is on zoning duty. Venenu just walks right in, has the turnaround damage, brings Sam low. Lasbra makes it in as well. SoloOrTroll here too. They don't stop the Fire Giant. Rival gets it, but Lasbra gets one. Venenu gets the second. They've got a Rival reeling on the back of the Fire Giant call. fineokay gets a big mantle stun that does shut down BaRRa, but the damage keeps coming. In comes Awesome Jake to pick up an assist that makes it 3 for 1.
I mean, that was the best case scenario for BaRRa. Spectral Armor not quite online yet for that Vamana. That was the only fight he's going to take. But if you take a peek at BaRRa's ability, it looks like he's going to work his way into Poison Star here and make it a little bit less likely that Vamana can dive him. But for now, two members of Team Rival have Fire Giant. It's SoloOrTroll and PolarBearMike. Those aren't the best targets you want. You usually want your Hunter to have it so you can get some of that sustain under these towers. But now it's going to be hard for them to leverage it, as well as this middle Phoenix should go down relatively uncontested.
I agree. Renegades should be able to grab this one. I mean, Sam's not even in position for the defense. It's really just PBM as Lasbra keeps him zoned. PolarBearMike does try and dive the backline, gets charred prey immediately, and the Phoenix is now starting to wither a little bit under all the pressure, but they haven't put in the last bit of damage. There it is. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel forces Sam's beads. He gets a good 3-man stun, and now the cavalry is here from Team Rival to look for some kills, but Lasbra's trying his best to disengage. Renegades have to get out of here cleanly, Mifflin, or it won't be worth it.
They should be able to. The chase is on, but all this CC immunity, it's all really going to come around to this Thor ult if that comes back up in time. Venenu might die, but if Team Rival wants to come out ahead, they're going to have to pick more than one.
Yeah, they got to cut their losses, I feel like, Mifflin. They can't all afford to die here. CaptainTwig goes in aggressively and gives his life away. What is that? Thunder Crash 4, my man. Awesome Jake gets the kill. They do lose the Tier 1 tower, and BaRRaCCuDDa falls as well. So maybe it's not all doom and gloom as Rival continue their pressure on the reverse push after just losing their mid-Phoenix. SoloOrTroll, though, has made it back to the fountain. Lasbra and Awesome Jake are all here as well, Mifflin. They get back underneath this mid-Phoenix and play some defense. Rival really can't afford to do much. Sam steals away the Magai's cloak from Lasbra, but Renegades should be able to play defense.
That's a net win for Renegades. Picking up that Phoenix, losing your Tier 2 tower, not that big of a deal. And they couldn't siege Team Rival, that is, because of these two tanky frontliners, SOT and Awesome Jake. Those are guys you're not going to be able to just ignore under that Phoenix, so they have to back up there, especially off of CaptainTwig's questionable jump in. But I understand the frustration of chasing out an enemy team. 5 dudes running away with you, all you see are the enemy's backs. You kind of want to get in there and deal some damage. Unfortunately, he loses his life in the process.
Yeah, I mean, if Twig is still alive, maybe you can make the case that they can try and at least look for a pick there and maybe get that Phoenix, but without him, they lose a lot of their burst potential against these Guardians, I feel like. So instead, there'll be a bit of a reset. Like we said, that Fire Giant's only on Sam and PolarBearMike. I doubt they're planning to siege just around that. So Mifflin, we really might be in a bit of stall time until this next Fire Giant comes up. So what stood out for you as the big difference maker in these team fights? I don't know that we've had a clean 5-on-5. They've all kind of been on the back of the objectives. But what's the big difference maker for you in these fights?
You're right to say that we haven't had a clean 5-on-5, but that's no coincidence. That's Team Rival's plan. They're not looking to take these 5-on-5 fights. But if Renegades can get something around Awesome Jake 408, anytime Xing Shen's ultimate finds 1 or 2 targets, Renegades instantly is on it, pulling off beads, pulling off shells, and making Team Rival play on that back foot. And as we said earlier, the second Team Rival does have to play on that back foot, and they need to rely on tanky frontliners to peel out for their squad. They just don't have it. They have to rely on aggression, and so far they haven't been able to find it. Team Rival is about 2,000 gold in the lead, but you wouldn't be able to tell looking at the state of the game. And now Fire Giant on the respawn very soon. Renegades 5-man grouped up here. It's going to be very hard for Team Rival to find their footing to defend this Fire Giant.
Yeah, I'd argue that Rival are in a bad spot here now, Mifflin. I mean, if Renegades are a shield and spear, then Rival are a spear and spear. And I just don't know if that's going to be enough for them 30 minutes into the game to try and get past all of Renegades. I feel like it really hinges on just how well this backline of Renegades can stay alive. If they can survive the dive from Rival, then the counter initiation from them is overwhelming. I don't know that Rival can stifle it. We're 50 seconds away from this next FG. A little bit of the positioning for Renegades has been given up, but they're still sticking around. This is going to be a pretty even battle over this next FG.
I think I keep my eyes on Lasbra here. I expect to see him dive deep onto CaptainTwig or PandaCat. And I think you got to keep your eyes on fineokay and whether or not he can find his way to BaRRaCCuDDa or Venenu. If either of those go well for one and not the other, that fight is going to be completely shifted. If Team Rival at any point in this upcoming team fight gets the upper hand, if they can start to push Renegades back even in the slightest, that's when they're going to be sitting at their most comfortable state. The second that they start to lose that fight, the comeback potential in the fight, as you said earlier, does not favor Team Rival at all. If Anvil of Dawn is down, if Taiko drums have been used, and there's no picks for Team Rival, they have no way to keep that fight going in their favor.
I 100% agree. They got to make sure that first initiation strong. The Fire Giant is now back on the map. Relics are available for everyone at this point as well, Mifflin, so it should be a fairly heads-up battle this next time. But as you love to say, Renegades, I think, have the slight defender's advantage. Remember, they just have more tanks who can step forward and earn ground, right? So it is a bit easier for them, I think, to establish that positional control.
I like what they're doing on Team Rival, trying to split up themselves as much as they can and try and draw the attention of Renegades back and forth throughout the Fire Giant and mid lane. If they can split up the fight, that's where they're favored. Team Rival in any 2v2 or 3v3, that's when they sit at their best because they do have that damage output on just about everyone. But in the 5v5, they aren't favored. So I like what they're doing here. But unfortunately, when there's such a central objective such as Fire Giant, it's very easy for Renegades to just stay 5-man grouped.
Look at PandaCat's last item there, Mifflin. He picks up the Magai's Cloak. That's because he's just been getting stomped on this game so far. 0-3-3. He has been the target. fineokay goes way into the backline, though, to look to try and set something up, and I think he might just get cooked for it. Venenu's in some trouble, can no longer reposition without the flicker, so he changes strategies to just burning him. fineokay wants to retreat, but their escape path's been cut off. This time, fineokay can't make the play. Venenu shuts him down, so Renegade's now favored in the 5v4.
I mean, that's exactly what I said I wanted to see, which was fineokay diving onto these hyper carries, but unfortunately does it with no backup from his team, and Lasbra doesn't even have to engage himself in the fight.
Well, Awesome Jake wants to return the favor. It looks like he goes forward with that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel into a bunch of beads and CC immunity and Magai's Cloaks. He does get all those CC immunities onto cooldown, but it costs him his life, and it's basically a one-for-one trade. Now, trading tank for tank favors Renegades because they've got an auxiliary one here in SoloOrTroll. He's looking to lock down one more member. That's PolarBearMike, and Lasbra has the flank, comes right around the backside, blows up CaptainTwig, gets a double kill. SoloOrTroll does make SoloOrTroll pay, but it's too little too late. Venenu gets aggressive steps on the gas, and PandaCat has to find a way to run, but gets slowed down. Lasbra's here to try and close the gap. PandaCat buying time from range with the autos, but Lasbra gets the kill, and it's just Sam standing.
Just Sam and no ultimate available. 3 members strong on Renegades. They can easily look to go towards that Phoenix, but fineokay respawns, and Sam puts Lasbra in the dirt.
That's a big kill for him, but Sam for Soccer, or rather Venenu, gets the shutdown kill in the other way. But now fineokay's up. He's not going to let these carries back. Can they win the battle up against the Colossal Fury? He cannot out-DPS them, so instead he must juke and try and buy time. But he takes extra damage, gets around the corner, should be out at this point. I don't think Baron Ven can just keep up the dive. But now that he's weakened, now he doesn't have the ultimate, they're going to come in and look for the actual Phoenix dive itself, push fineokay all the way back to the fountain, and take the mid-Phoenix. What a play!
What a play indeed. I mean, fine, just not quite tanky enough. Partially due to that Poison Star and BaRRaCCuDDa just making that Colossal form not as appealing as it once was. Mid-Phoenix does fall in favor of Renegades, but Fire Giant's still available, and both teams are on the respawn. It's about the exact same state we were in 5 minutes ago. Now you got an Oni Fury minion wave spawning in favor of you if you're Renegades, but it's still going to be very easy for Team Rival to clear those out and get to that Fire Giant.
It's the same state, but Venenu and BaRRaCCuDDa are that much time stronger. I mean, they could sell boots and buy items. They could upgrade relics. I feel like the power spikes still left for Renegades are slightly better than Rival here at this point. So time favors the Order side team. BaRRaCCuDDa back in play. Still has the boots for now. They haven't quite been able to sell those off for those 6 items. Not quite that deep yet, but still, Renegades have got to be feeling good after the way these last few fights have gone.
I said it last fight, I'm going to say it again. All eyes on fineokay to see if maybe he gets a little bit more successful dive this time, or at least if the rest of Team Rival off the back end of it can chase in the team as they collapse onto him. fineokay did a good job of surviving for at least 5 seconds on his last dive, especially considering there were literally 4 members of Renegades committing all their resources to shutting him down. So if Team Rival can make some use of that time, maybe dive elsewhere or look towards mid lane and pick up Lasbra as he's always been separated in these fights, that's what we expect to see. But Team Rival can't do what they did last time, which was send fineokay in, do nothing, let him die, and then get picked elsewhere in the fight. Renegades now still have the defender's positioning as well as the Phoenix down.
PolarBearMike's gotten aggressive. That's the last breath used on Lasbra, but Lasbra seems undeterred. They did get the shell out from Awesome Jake as well as Lasbra's beat, so that is a pretty good initiation there from PBM to strip them of some resources, though it looks like it did cost him his blink as well. Pyromancer goes down in favor of Renegades. That is small at this point in the game. That's not a huge deal, really. It's more about just grabbing a little bit off the map, giving them some backs if they needed to return quickly, and setting them up for this next fight.
Yeah, XP completely equal. Everyone in the game level 20. Gold deficit's only 2,036 minutes in, so all the builds are just about the same as well. The only true advantage in this game right now is the fact that Renegades has taken away Rival's mid-Phoenix. But even then, that's one of the easiest lanes for Rival to defend if they are trying to contest this Fire Giant, and it looks like they are. So as it stands, this game could go either way. This team fight could be completely indicative. If Team Rival wins it cleanly, they take the game. If Renegades wins it cleanly, they take the game. It's anyone's match.
Renegades started up the FG, then they dropped it. Awesome Jake gonna step forward. That's the Thunder Crash from CaptainTwig. I don't know if anyone recognizes. He doesn't have that mobility for a little while, but it looks like not on the side of Renegades. They'll disengage. And you talked about fineokay's dive. If he can get both carries looking at him, his team is left in a 4v3. That should be favorable, right? All the damage dealers are taken out of the equation, but Rival just can't do enough with that small window that fineokay's given him.
You're absolutely right. And I wouldn't even call it a 4v3. The entirety of these last couple team fights is dance around the Fire Giant. Lasbra has been completely split off from Renegades, trying to push down the mid lane, trying to get those Fire Minions flooding in. So even if they do get that fight rolling for them, Team Rival that is, it's going to be a slight lag there while Lasbra tries to rotate back into the fight and peel out for his team. So Rival's comp should work here as you said, that double spearhead just continually driving home. They have that lag time for Lasbra to rotate back into the fight. The only thing that they need to be worried about, Team Rival that is keeping Twig alive against the Pele's dive.
And that is what he has struggled with here so far this game. Both he and PandaCat have been in trouble, and Twig is in trouble yet again. Mifflin, the Nostradamus here, as he predicts it correctly. Twig falls one more time, and the rest of Renegades are going to head right back towards the FG. They're not ready to start pulling it just yet, but they know that Rival can't afford to step in now, not down 5v4, now without their main damage dealer in CaptainTwig.
Man, if chat can see my face right now, I'm grinning ear to ear. I love saying a thing and then immediately seeing it happen. Twig, I'm sorry I caster's cursed you there, bud. But it's okay. Not all is lost for Team Rival. The mid-Phoenix does spawn now, and Fire Giant still hasn't seen any contention.
Yeah, they're not going to do it at all, Mifflin. I think they just want to come threaten this right side Phoenix, especially with all these minions pushed up and left, with there being fire minions here in mid. I think this is the call to really try and stretch Rival's resources thin in this next 20-second window before Twig is back up. They cannot defend all 3 lanes successfully here up against Renegades, so they're going to try and step on the gas, but I think this might still be too slow. Twig's going to be up in 10 seconds. Renegades got to really make sure this force this if they're going to try and do without FG. Lasbra in trouble in mid. 2 members dive him, so his team is favored in right if they can win that trade, and Lasbra is buying tons of time. PolarBearMike finally completes the kill, but Renegades are losing their fight over on the right-hand side. Big dunk from Sam starts to bring everybody low. Renegades on the full retreat. They couldn't execute the plan that they devised.
I mean, you said it earlier, Renegades, this is when they start to make these questionable decisions. I would have loved to see them back up to Fire Giant, but instead, Venenu's going to fall, Jake's getting chased out. So far, 4 clean kills, 60 seconds on the nearest spawn. This should be game for Team Rival.
I agree, man. It's a full deicide if they get this kill into Awesome Jake, which they absolutely should be able to. And I think that the plan made some sense. Mifflin, I'd love to hear your thought on this. I mean, it just feels like they lose a 4v2 over in right, while Lasbra buys time dying there in mid. I mean, I know they're up against Phoenix too. It's hard to dive, but that just absolutely didn't work.
I mean, they had everything that they needed there, right? They had the pick. They had 2 people forced to defend mid for Team Rival, so it was a 4v2 on that solo side Phoenix, but unfortunately the engagement never came out. It was never quite enough. I understand the necessity to try and close out the game. At this late state, especially when the stakes are as high as they were, you're always looking to find the end as quickly as possible. You don't want to make those mistakes, but unfortunately going for the end there was the mistake. Fire Giant was an enhanced at this point. It would have been a free pickup. They had the pick. They forced out all of Rival, so no one was there to defend it. They could have backed up and continued their push, knowing that they were also favored in the 5v5 fight because of their draft. But instead, Renegades just get a little bit trigger happy and lose themselves the match.
That's a brutal loss, man, for Renegades. It honestly is. I mean, there's only 2 ways to look at the way the end of that game goes, right? Either the call was incorrect and they should have made it, or the call was correct and they executed it poorly. There's no world, I think, where Renegades can feel good about how the end of that game goes there, Mifflin. That is an absolutely brutal loss in a position where they were favored. Those are the 5 guys, though. They got to find some kind of way to shake that off and get ready for that second game. But before that, I'll get it back over to the desk and let them break it down.
Thank you, Finch and Mifflin. And I'm going to pick up right where Finch left off, Gore. That is brutal for the Renegades. And this is tough. I look over at my notes that I'm taking on this game, and they're all Renegades notes throughout the entire game. Lasbra's doing big things. The first 3 Furies of this game go over to the Renegades. There's like a Fire Giant steal maybe for Team Rival. But this one's Renegades through and through, really, for the first 30 minutes. And Team Rival flip it on its head right at the end.
So there's so much, I guess, that you could go through, and yeah, there's all these little moments to dissect. Oh, look how Renegades are doing well through X, through Y, through Z. Oh, fineokay comes in and steals a Fire Giant. That is a sick play to be able to come through. And then it all kind of gets undone, no matter how far ahead Renegades are at the very end there. And I'll tell you, Dave, I can guarantee if there's some MLB players watching right now, they're jealous of that throw, because that one was very, very difficult to get into a position where you were going to lose a Phoenix and a Titan there for Renegades. But one slip up, sometimes just stepping outside of the box here, is all it's going to take. That, if anything, is maybe more well played by Rival, because they recognize where Renegades have made their mistakes.
Wow. fineokay tosses out the umbrella, takes the Fire Giant. Yeah, if that's a throw, it's a 100-mile-per-hour fastball to one of the top corners. Hard to hit. But I think that to dissect that further, in your opinion, I mean, obviously there's communication going on behind the scenes for the Renegades, but you look at that call there to forego the enhanced Fire Giant entirely. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but you know that's kind of our job here on the post-game desk. Do you agree with the idea of completely foregoing that Fire Giant and attempting for, maybe a Phoenix, maybe to try to end the game?
Man, trying to siege without Fire Giant, it's difficult to siege with Fire Giant. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out. You get this 40-minute enhanced Fire Giant ability to push forward. I feel like there's a couple of calls there that maybe Renegades are able to skirt the difference, but again, I think Finch put it best where you had to look at it either the call was bad and they shouldn't have gone in with it, or the call was good and the execution wasn't there. But I think with the fact that we saw them follow through, it comes down to the fact that the call did not, I think, fit for what the team needed at the moment. And Rival, after a game of slip-ups where it feels kind of like running down the aisle and then they just slip on a banana peel, right? Where it's like there's a lot going okay for them, but nothing ever keeping them like ahead or getting them into a good position. So unfortunately for Rival, that, I guess, didn't work out for, 39 minutes? And then the last 2 minutes they needed it to be successful, it was.
And I think that's a big takeaway for Rival, although the majority of that game's not in their favor. This is a team, I mean, all things were even, make no mistake, by the time that the Renegades make the call to siege that right side Phoenix, there might be a gold differential, but everyone's full build, XP is all equalized at that point. So Rival's a team that can really make you pay for a small slip-up, and that's what the Renegades had there towards the end. And as such, Rival, they take game number 1, but we're going to jump right into picks and bans for game number 2. Hunbat's taken away. Odin is as well. Thor, though, taken off the board here by the Renegades. I don't dislike that call. I think Sam on Thor is scary enough to just go ahead and take off the board.
And it's weird because, that didn't even feel as high impact as Sam can feel on Thor, right?
Right.
And it's still enough to make me think, let's ban that one away. And so I think it's something to be worried about, but it brings in this conversation. I think Jake's Xing Chen was really, really solid, but now you're going to have to deal with this Camazotz. And what we saw last set is that, yes, technically he's been nerfed, but it didn't really stop adapting from having a good game with him. I don't think it's going to stop Rival from being able to bring him to success either.
And I will say, that game doesn't go Renegade's way, but what I saw out of Awesome Jake, there were some aggressive plays, some worked out, some didn't. But that's about what we've come to expect, and I think what we should continue to expect from Jake. Lots of blink plays. You look at the beautiful play he made in the short lane, delaying 4 members of Team Rival, burning ultimates, the shell as well. So I like them potentially putting Jake, and likely now will be putting Jake, back on this Xing Chen after, despite the end to that game, was a good performance.
And I think being able to, Dave, I can't help but think about it. The fact that we've seen Jake come through, and a lot of questions were around him and how he was going to perform in the league, being able to come up. Because, you go in and you watch his stream, or if you see him through BaRRa's stream, sometimes he's out there playing Neath support, and you're just like, I don't know, is this the guy? Is he going to be the one who can do it? And what we got to see, I think, out of that Xing Chen, what we might get to see again out of this tier, or at least what we saw last week out of a tier in the support role, well, it was actually something really, really solid. And I don't know how well it's going to work against something like an Artio if it is a solo lane tier. But if they just throw Xing Chen into the solo lane and give that over to Jake, then I expect we're going to see him getting aggressive. And I don't know if Rival have a lot of practice against something like that.
That's true. I see tier and I assume solo lane, but with Awesome Jake, I might be thinking twice. But I think quick thoughts on Poseidon locked in here. First time in the SPL. Janus as well. Talk about an entirely new mid-lane matchup for the day. What do you like there?
Man, when I'm looking at mid lane, I feel like I'm going to have to give the edge to Poseidon. I think he's just more consistent, and that's going to be where consistency is key. His damage is easy to hit. The Kraken is easy to hit. Everything that you want out of him is going to be burst, and it's in, big, easy circles versus Janus having to aim that unstable vortex. Just sometimes one step to the left, right, back, forward will make that damage miss. You miss your burst, and all of a sudden you have nothing to fall back on. You just have to portal out of there. So I think Poseidon's going to be the consistency king here in mid. And that might cause a little bit more trouble, I think, for Renegades kind of splashing down.
Well, Renegades will hope to make good on a strong early game and grab game number 2. Rival looking to close it out.
Man, forgive me, Dawson. I'm still in my feelings about how game 1 ended, man. I have to shake that one off. So are Renegades as we move into game number 2. And it looks like we're going to be seeing the Awesome Jake special. No, it's a bit of a trick here. SoloOrTroll will take the tier, and Awesome Jake's on the Xing Chen. Would love to see him reprise the performance from last week. Meanwhile, though, Rival have... we've seen a couple of Awilix just picked up here, and I think that she's going to be getting a little bit of additional value, especially against something like our Serqet with all these leaps at her disposal. I think we might see more of this Awilix.
I think we might. Awilix is one of my favorite junglers. I mean, if you remember my storied career, that's the one that I can play. I mean, Featherstep, very nearly an execute at level 2. BaRRaCCuDDa forced his beads out immediately into the game. Your purple buff hasn't even spawned yet, bud. Now your beads are down. It's going to be very hard for him to get his footing, especially considering PandaCat on this Ullr is going to make great use of that lack of beads.
Sorry, I'm in some pain. I've seen plenty of those Artio body blocks from you, Mifflin, when you were my teammate, so I assume there was plenty of pain for BaRRaCCuDDa there as well when he had to deal with them just now. PolarBearMike, though, going to keep up the aggression, trying to strip it away, but so many of these supports have Hog now in the early game that these invades are getting harder and harder, I think. Awesome Jake secures that with his own Hog usage, and PolarBearMike can't strip it away, but that won't stop him from going to red. Venenu just has to give up on it. In fact, now he's sandwiched. Only Janus can get away from that, I guess, as he portals through the wall.
I love that play from Mike there, just positioning, not even threatening the red buff means that he opens it up for this 3-man invade. Now Twig, SamForSoccer, and Mike are primed and ready to invade this red buff, as well as Ullr's got BaRRaCCuDDa locked down in that lane, so he's not going to be able to rotate out. This should be pretty easy for Rival to run away with. And they do.
They've already got it low, and they will indeed take the red buff, as you said. And that's all, I think, as you accurately put it, because of the way that PolarBearMike rotated over. We are seeing less of the speed buff invade. We're going to be seeing a lot less going forward. You all already saw some of the changes coming around that. But this is some ways for you to still be active in the early game as a support, I think. He just kind of stands near red, and Vin's like, I can't do this by myself. And it sets up for Twig to take that aggressive pathing that's normally so dangerous. He knows it's safe. The rest of the squad rotates in. They get a nice invade. Rival, after, I think, stealing one away last game, look like they're returning to form here in Game 2.
Yeah, Rival definitely looking a lot more comfortable with their comp as well. A more early game focus, but also you have these traditional frontliners out of PolarBearMike. We see him returning to a bit of comfort on this Artio pick, which I'm a huge fan of. If Mike's able to sit up front and do whatever he wants, that's Mike at his happiest for my money, right? That's what you want him to do. You don't want him playing an assassin. He's not an assassin player. So I love seeing him back on this Guardian pick. Camazotz in the solo lane, I mean, fineokay should be able to run away with it. He's such a high-pressure god, so much sustain and survivability, so he should be able to exude that pressure onto SOT. I mean, everything's going well for Rivals so far.
Hi, my name is Sam. You got your speed buff, but come pick it up. PolarBearMike is here as well, as he continues to put pressure on the Lasbra. They are not going to let him come over here and grab it, so it almost wasn't worth. I mean, obviously defending the farm itself is still valuable, but you'll love to see a little bit of that extra bullying happening. They finally give it up, come down to strip away the blue buff as well. And this is truly unfettered aggression from Team Rival now. They are just chilling on the chaos side of the map and stripping away every camp they find. They're going for another one. It's both PolarBearMike and SamForSoccer stripping away more. And Lasbra really can't afford to step up and try and contest this.
I mean, Lasbra really can't, especially considering that there is an Awilix there who is going to scale a little bit harder than your Serqet at level 3. It's going to be hard for Lasbra to contest anyone just on his own, as well as, I know how Lasbra's feeling right now. You have a Janus in your mid lane, and you're playing Serqet. Janus is completely focused towards the late, and he's not going to follow up on any of your CC because he's a Janus, right? So you have to just let him farm up. You don't want to sit there and soak up his farm. Instead, you want to farm your own jungle.
Well, that's going to be the call. More aggression happening over on the left-hand side of the map. Two members being dove right now. Seeing the rotation coming over from the Poseidon here as well, but not going to be too much action, I don't think, happening, at least at this point here in the game, Mifflin, at least not right now. So instead, these two squads are going to fall back for a little bit, and I think take a little bit of time to try and decide how they want this to go. Clearly from Rival, it is aggression in the early game, right? It is all about finding these buff invades. So I think that if you're on Renegades right now, the question has got to be about getting back in and finding a way to be in position for these buff invades, right? Finding a way to shut these buff invades down, make sure you're rotating members over, whether it's over for the blue buff or for speed or whatever it is. The next time that Rivals show up at your doorstep and start trying to strip away some of your farm from you, you got to make sure that you've got enough people there that you can slow them down.
You really do. Rival has been doing such a fantastic job of just playing the map as well. No first blood yet, but still 1,000 gold deficit in favor of them just off the back of these invades, and that's how it's done. One invade doesn't create a lead, two invades might create a lead, but 3, 4, and continuing to do more, Team Rival is completely dominating, despite the fact that they haven't even taken truly a fight yet. and that's partially due to the fact that Janus is a low-pressure mid laner, so he's not able to put out as much damage. Lasbra's a little bit more mid to late game focused on this Serqet, so it's going to be harder for her to get involved in the early game as well. I mean, so much is going Team Rival's way so far that I imagine we don't even see Renegades go for this fight yet. We don't see them group up around these defenses, and maybe they wait for this first objective, but if Team Rival continues to create the lead that they have, it's going to be hard to defend that as well.
SoloOrTroll has to use the Lawbringer. Fineokay was going to back. He comes over just to force it. I think it's actually a nice win for Fine. It does give him a slight kill potential. It's still really hard to take down a tier, but potentially fineokay can get it done. So no red buff invade. Renegades defend that one themselves. And maybe you're right. Maybe Renegades really won't be rotating over to these buffs anymore and fighting over them. But they're going to make sure they don't just let things spiral out of control, sort of as you were alluding to. You've got this Janus and the Xbalanque. These are guys that want to get some items online before they start fighting. And if you give away the early game to an Awilix and an Artio, who do want to fight an Ullr, you might never get it back. As Sam is in some trouble, pinned against the wall. It's SOT, not Awesome Jake, making the tier look good. The knockup is there.
Wow.
The Kraken buys time, and somehow Rival get first blood. They get a double kill, and they drag everyone back out of there. SOT wants to get Sam for soccer, but Sam has been elusive. Sam has been evasive. He uses the Feather Step to immune more damage. Can't immune it all, though. Does finally get shut down.
Renegades does finally get that one pick back in favor, but that's exactly what I was talking about. Rival tit for tat every step of the way, all the way across the map. They have the better god for the early game fight. Xbal versus Ullr, Ullr's going to win that in the early game. Janus versus Poseidon, Poseidon's going to win that in the early game. Junglers, I mean, it's all the way across. Team Rival should be running it, and they should be running it down completely in this, up until maybe 15 minutes in, when Renegades start to get these power spikes, maybe then they can start to fight it in. But until then, they're going to be on the back foot purely based on this composition, which, as we saw last game, they're comfortable with. They're comfortable playing from behind. So maybe they're just accepting it for now, but from what we saw there, they're continuing to take these fights now. Now that especially they have this deficit, they can't do it again. They have to start to look towards maybe stealing away buffs when the enemy team invades on theirs, or maybe look to try and get some of these objectives once their own buff spawns. I know at this point, maybe if Rival moves in towards your speed buff, you might be able to sneak away at Gold Fury, but as far as fights go, if I'm Renegades, I'm not looking for a single one.
No, that's backbreaking, isn't it, the way that last fight went? I mean, it's disheartening, truly, is what it is. And that might have done more mental damage than actual damage here on the map. They should have been able to come away from that one much easier, much cleaner. But instead, Rival find a way to make that play happen. And Twig showing up, man. I had so many questions about him in the middle lane, especially after his week 1 performance. I didn't think that it was quite enough. But that rotation, that Kraken placement, that was all exactly what they needed, the Whirlpool 2, to make sure they can keep Sam alive. So I think I 100% agree. I doubt Renegades are happy to take any more fight to the next 5 minutes or so. And Rival are now looking like they're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, that said, they can't take any more fights going forward. However, they're already 2,000 gold down 8 minutes in. That's pretty ugly. If you have the late game comp, you have to be completely committed to stopping the bleed from minute 1. Before there's any deficit, you have to seed the map and play to stop the bleed and know that 25-minute mark is what you're looking for. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Renegades are willing to do that. Now it's 2,000 in favor of Rival. They could look towards moving towards this Gold Fury, maybe wait till the 10-minute mark when the Pyromancer spawns and goes there. Rival should have free reign of anywhere on the map that they want to be.
Just about in every lane, they have a god that fights a little bit sooner than on the other side. I don't know if that's necessarily true for solo and support, but everywhere else, that feels pretty confidently in favor of Team Rival. And then you factor in the fact they've started to build themselves up some nice leads. It makes things scarier too. The Gold Fury's up right now, and Rival have a couple members in position, but I don't think they're trying to force this as Twig forces Lasbra's beads by himself. That's a nice get. Lasbra going to be a lot less safe in these fights from now on.
Yeah, now if he goes for the ultimate, Serqet going to be locked down, no beads available as well. That should be a death sentence, so I don't imagine you see Lasbra look for anything for the next little bit, which was to be expected. Renegade's already on the back foot, so maybe they don't want to fight it out. PandaCat's been allowed to sit on this tier 1 tower line for the entire game, and that's simply because of how much pressure Team Rival is putting onto Lasbra. He isn't able to make these superfluous rotations to look for ganks because he's already struggling to find farm. He's getting invaded. He has to split farm with Janus as well. I mean, there's not much in there for the jungler to find his way back in on his own. It's going to be rooted around BaRRaCCuDDa. It's going to be rooted around SoloOrTroll. Those are the guys you have to fight around if you're Renegades at this point. And even then, I would only fight around SoloOrTroll as he's got a slight even advantage in that lane. He should be able to force any CC out, and any fight that happens around this tier should go their way. But at the same time, if you rotate over to that short lane as Renegades, you're opening up Gold Fury to be stolen away for free. So it's going to be very difficult for them to find that right balance of playing defensively and then also trying to close this gap up.
And the only thing worse for Lasbra than losing all of his farm is losing all of his farm and potentially giving a kill away to PandaCat over and left. But they've done a good job of kind of keeping their buffs on cooldown a bit more. See, Rival are here, lurking around the jungle, looking for something to farm, but there's really not much on the Chaos side that's up. Renegades have done a good job kind of keeping these camps on cooldown these last few fights, but it's still tough for Renegades, as Sam might have found the loop around that he was looking for. Awesome Jake goes into his ultimate, more for CC immunity, but he gets gobbled up anyway. The Kraken comes out from Twig as he notches his first kill of the game, and they'll have a little bit of time where they've got the 5v4. Whoa!
But meanwhile, on the other side, SOT doing exactly what I said, taking the one place on the map where Renegades can take a fight. He takes it himself, gets that solo kill. Unfortunately, the 408 does fall at the same time in mid. And if you even look at Jake's positioning there, he was halfway between his tower and the center of the lane. That's very conservative positioning from Jake. And unfortunately, Rival has such a good fight, such a good lead, that it doesn't matter how far back he is, Jake gets picked out.
And he uses the ultimate almost right away, too, to try and prevent exactly that, all that control from coming out and maybe get some displacement or at least some beads out from Rival. I believe he did get Sam's purification beads, but it just wasn't enough, was it? He ended up falling right away as a result. The good news is that SoloOrTroll gets a kill on the back of it, and Rival don't necessarily take the check that is killing Awesome Jake to the bank, right? They don't go cash that necessarily for like a gold fear or any big buff invades or anything. Renegades, you can see, are securing their own red buff. So again, you obviously don't want your support dying or anything like that, but it could easily have been worse.
But since I last spoke on it, it was about a 2,000 gold lead. Now it's already up to 3,000, and not much has happened for Team Rival besides the fact that they're playing the map so well. I mean, Renegades has to find a way in.
This could be trouble. Mike's in a bad spot, but the cavalry is there through space and time, does clip PBM, so he's really low. SOT does not have blink for this. I don't know that PolarBearMike realized that maybe he should be running. Beads comes out from him. The Kraken and the Whirlpool shut him down. Sam Forsop gets last bit of damage, so SOT ends up falling. But even though it cost him his life, they delayed the gold fear, but Rival are right back on it. It's down to half, and Renegades have to find a way to contest, but it's a bait. They want them to come in. They want these picks. Renegades, though, strip the gold fury away. Somehow they weave in some damage and strip it away.
I said it last game that you can't rely on Gold Fury steals to keep you in the game, but it seems like that is Renegade's plan. 2 games now, they get these Gold Fury steals to keep themselves just barely above water, and it's working out for them. The second SOT falled, it was over. That's your team fight gone. Venenu has no mana, so he's not able to participate at all. Your only true frontliner is dead. That Gold Fury should have been completely free for Rival, but instead, Renegades just sealed away. Now they don't have to worry about that neutral objective anymore, so Renegades can go back to farming passively. Maybe they still do lose their buffs, but that's about as good as you could hope for.
And they want to do more than that. They want to look for some ganks. They shut down PolarBearMike with a perfectly executed gank on the right-hand side. And Pyromancer's up. Perhaps they're thinking of taking their numbers advantage there, but they're not going to get greedy, Mifflin. They get their pick. They head right back and start farming their own side of the map. And you're absolutely right. I don't think Renegades have really any claim. That is 80-20 in favor of Rival on that Fury. The thing to mention is that Twig did use the Kraken trying to clean up SOT, so they didn't have their confirmation. They do force out Twig's beads here in mid, though, so he's able to get back and reposition towards that mid tower. But I think that Kraken being down does leave them a bit open to those steals.
Stealing away Twig's beads there is also huge. Now that unbridled aggression that we've been seeing from Rival, they can't do it as easily. They can't move in for this next rotation of buffs because Twig doesn't have beads. He doesn't have Kraken for a little while either. So now their fight potential is down as well as survivability. But now SoloOrTroll in a little bit of trouble under that tower.
Gets pulled back in, still has the Lawbringer, but channels it, running the wrong direction. fineokay gets an easy cleanup kill coming back to lane and shuts SoloOrTroll down. And that's a backbreaker for a couple of reasons, because that was the one lane where things are going well, where they'd found a couple picks in solo. You hate to give some extra farm back because Rival are in position to capitalize. They head right to the Pyromancer and start burning it, and Renegades have no way to contest, so it's a pick on the right side and a neutral objective.
Unfortunately, had Renegades had a ward on it, they would have realized Poseidon was out of mana and they were doing it, but it seems like they were just none the wiser. Now this tower going to see some aggression. Lazarus beads are forced out. That's his life as well. Tier 1 tower going down, Pyromancer going down. Rival's just running away with it.
That is a misread from Lasbra as well. I don't think there was any world where he can contest there, especially against this Artio, who's such a decent matchup into the Serqet. Well, now they'll take a look at the Tier 2 tower and right. SoloOrTroll is here, so I doubt they can just force this down, and Sam is starting to reposition, so is fine. They're recognizing this isn't really for them, but that is an unfortunate sequence. The SOT pick, where it's great work by Sam to pull him back underneath the Tier 1 tower, over to the Pyromancer, over to the Tier 1, and a pick onto Lasbra. Suddenly that gold leaves expanded right back out.
It seems like Renegades are just getting so frustrated. The clean play that we saw last game has fallen apart completely. Now they see flashes of brilliance around this Gold Fury steal. We see flashes of brilliance when SOT gets this solo kill. But the second that it comes down to being a cohesive unit, Renegades is falling apart. Now 5,000 or 4,500 gold in favor of Rival. No neutral objectives available to be taken, but that solo lane tower is kind of huge. This mid lane tower for Renegades is on its last legs completely. Once that falls, the map is going to be opened up so much. I mean, it's so hard for Renegades now, especially considering they do have these late game hyper carries to get to that late game state. Already 5,000 gold down, it's going to be incredibly difficult, and there's no more neutral objectives to steal. It's going to be all up to this team fight from Renegades to keep their towers up. It's not looking good.
They're in a difficult spot, but as you said, they do have sort of that late game edge, right? I mean, slightly. I don't know how tremendously favored they are in the late game, but you've got this Xbalanque that they're working towards, who's got a great team fighting ultimate. Janus can always set up your team to make some big plays. This beefy front line with the Xing Chen and the Tier, and then Serqet can always get to the back line and blow up a target. So they've got some tools they can work with to try and get this job done, but I just don't know if they're favored enough to come in with a disadvantage. Lasbra forces the beads out from PandaCat, but now he's stuck in a bad situation. Through space and time, brings in the cavalry and the rest of the squad, but PolarBearMike is here to play goldly and slow down some of this aggression. SoloOrTroll has 2 distracted over on the right-hand side, but in left, there's 3 members of Rival that want a bit more aggression. That Kraken, I guess, is just here to say hello, doesn't really get any damage at all. And that might be a lot of the team fight presence from Rival that just went by the wayside.
You said it so well. PBM just completely stopping the aggression, just placing himself between his team and the enemies, immediately shifting the dynamic of the fight. Now the Tier 1 tower is under some duress.
Rival should be able to force this one down. Renegades are fully giving it up. And oh, by some happy coincidence, they're winning a fight in left right when the Fury is spawning, except it's not really by any coincidence. It's exactly why you come over and force a fight. And this is why Sam is forcing out relics and health from Venenu and very nearly getting the pick. It won't be enough to shut him down, but Venenu cannot be a part of this fight. He doesn't have this ultimate. So now Team Rival can favored come back over towards this Fury. Though it doesn't like they're starting it up right away. There's some indecision, and it looks like they're not going to actually start. I thought they must really want this fight. Now it's me that's indecisive. They are going to start it. Primal has been pulled, but Renegades know about it. They're going to bring a couple members over to play defense.
But take a peek at CaptainTwig's mana. He's just about out of it. Every time one of these team fights starts, both mid laners seem to be Janus teleporting in, now completely full health and mana as well.
And Twig gets smacked by the through space and time, so he's got to start playing some defense. The Kraken comes out, but SOT uses the beads, but he just doesn't have any more cooldowns. CaptainTwig is still alive, and they found the pick on the BaRRaCCuDDa as well, so they have to huddle up, all play defense around Twig so that he can reposition. SoloOrTroll taking a ton of extra poke. Twig is out, and now it's just a 4-on-4 that's favoring Team Rival, unless they lose Sam. Nice pick on the right side by Lasbra.
But Ven now in some trouble as well. He's going to lose his life, getting a little bit overzealous with his positioning. Jake now on the back foot has to retreat, and Gold Fury open to be taken. Serqet doesn't really have anything available to contest it outside of her ultimate, and 1 versus 3, I'm going to bet on the 3 if it's Serqet every single day.
Well, we call this a post-dated check then, as now they come to cash it. Lasbra is nearby, so we're fine. Okay, these axes have been a bit off the mark from PandaCat. Gotta find these to really get that maximum Ullr value, but they are going to pull this Primal right back in. 4 members of Rival, only 3 of Renegades. No relics available for the backline at all for Team Rival. That's part of why they're playing so cautiously. And look at Twig. It's a good moment to mention that he's going with the upgraded shell instead of an Aegis, something that we've been seeing trending a lot more here lately in place of that Aegis.
It's going to be very nice if BaRRaCCuDDa finds his way back there. It's going to be easy for him to stop some of those auto-attack aggression, as well as that shell is going to be insanely huge in stopping Lasbra from finding the main source of burst, popping that passive. Going to be able to block 3 auto-attacks there, so it's going to be hard for Serqet to find these 1v1s in the backline as well. I love that shell pickup. But Team Rival hasn't been able to confirm this gold Fury just quite yet, but they've forced so many fights off of it that the gold lead is only continuing to grow. 4.7 thousand now. It was 5,000 a moment ago, and the gold Fury is still available. It's going to be easy for them to continue to keep forcing these fights. Renegades can't let it go, but it seems like that might be what's happening.
They're trying to get in position, but there's just no way. They throw the through space and time. I think it was on the money. It just was a little bit too late there from Venenu, so they could not actually steal it away. And Rival now even more firmly in control than they were just a minute ago. But I love the way you talked about the shell and how that's going to interact with Lasbra. And proccing that Catalyst passive when he has those poisons built up, that's a lot of the damage, right? That's most of it for the Serqet, really, when you get all those poisons stacked up. So potentially could be some big shell value or block some of BaRRa's autos as well. And sort of as Aggro pointed out, when you've got the shell up, it's not like Aegis where you have that moment where you can't cast any abilities. You can put that shell up, get a lot of the same effects, and still end up being active. So I love the shell being considered in a lot more scenarios. But Renegades want to get a little bit back in return. They're starting up this Pyromancer myth.
Yeah, what an interesting call from Renegades. Maybe they're just trying to check the security, as you love to say, and apparently there was none. Pyromancer goes completely uncontested. It is a little bit in favor of Renegades, but still, that's a huge hill they have to climb. 5,000 in favor of Team Rival. If Rival decides to go ahead and pull the Fire Giant here and start the dance a little bit earlier than we're used to seeing, it could go their way, and that's what we're going to see. Camazotz go ahead and start it up, and it's burning fast.
They are burning it quickly. PandaCat and Twig providing the DPS. PolarBearMike trying to provide the zone. He does keep a couple members at bay. This is all around the Kraken confirmation, and Rival get the objective through space and time. Doesn't provide a ton of value, but it does set up some pathways for them. Good use of the Fearless there from SoloOrTroll as well, but the backline could be in trouble. Lasbra has forced his way in, and Twig will be the target, but he's already done his job. fineokay gets the first kill. They make it at least a 1-for-1 trade, and they're still winning the battle in the backline as Sam for Soccer goes toe-to-toe with BaRRaCCuDDa. fineokay gets a double kill. Rival now favored 4v3. Low HP bars for Renegades as well, so Rival going to step on the gas.
Committing all those resources onto Twig just split the fight up so much. The second you leave BaRRaCCuDDa alone, you've lost the fight on the side of Renegades. He is your most consistent, highest damage output god. You can't leave these carries alone, and that's exactly what happens. Rival optimized on it perfectly, finding that pick, and now they can continue this push towards these towers. Awilix can split this push over towards that long lane and take that tier 2 as well. I mean, Renegades are looking disjointed at best.
I agree. Rival have 4 damage dealers with which to play with, and Renegades really only have 1, so they'll take those trades any day of the week. They grabbed the tier 2 tower in right already, the tier 2 in mid, and the tier 2 in left. This is the clinical precision we're used to seeing from Rival that got them to runner-up last year and only falling short up against SK, now the Knights, Sans, Sam for Soccer. And it's what we expected from this last week and just wasn't quite there from the Rival squad. It's why people were so surprised that they ended up losing. And even in game 1 of this set, right, Renegades looked cleaner in that game. But Rival held on through all of that, got the ugly win, so to speak. And now here they are back with the return to form in game 2.
Yeah, Renegades are looking frustrated at best. 3 minutes ago, the gold lead was 5,000 in favor of Team Rival. Now we're looking at 11, maybe 12,000. Fire Giant available for as long as they need it. The only one who doesn't have it is CaptainTwig, which is a little bit detrimental. His burst is going to take a slight hit there, but the rest of your squad has Fire Giant. These Phoenixes are going to be very easy to siege, especially considering taking a peek at Renegade's comp. The only real anti-siege tools they have are awesome Jake 408 on this Xing using his ultimate to maybe force a fight under the Phoenix or throw them out of it. And BaRRaCCuDDa can blind them for a second, but that's not going to be quite enough to stop the aggression. Outside of that, it's just going to be a hard-fought battle for Renegades. They might have to take the fight outside the Phoenix in a bit of a cheeky play and get a pick, because they are not favored once they get onto that Phoenix.
Look at the player damage chart, Smith. Look where Ven is, man. All the way at the bottom, below awesome Jake even at 3,600. I mean, that's just nowhere near enough throughout 24 minutes of this game, right? And you'd expect it to be more. It's not as if CaptainTwig's lighting it up on those charts either, but he's been pretty instrumental in the setup of some of these kills. I don't think Venenu has matched his value in terms of utility or damage up to this point. But Rival are playing it slow. It looks like they're going to slow down on making this push.
Yeah, I like that you point out that Janus isn't doing properly well. I do enjoy seeing a Janus fail. However, his build is itemized towards that damage. Spear of Deso's come out. He's got the pen from Soul Reaver as well. There's so much damage there, and he's just not able to find it. And that is a failing of the character. Unfortunately, he is a more utility-focused god, so I would like to see him shift his build towards more CDR so he can just make these portals for his squad. Unfortunately, he does itemize towards damage and doesn't quite find it. Now, the Phoenixes are going to be contested out here. They've got the split push going. We got Camazotz and Awilix rotating around this mid lane, trying to force out this split engagement. 3 versus 3 and 2 versus 2 in the middle lane. It's not going to be easy for Renegades. It wasn't going to be easy in a 5v5, but especially when a tanky, huge damage output Camazotz is running down your mid lane, you're going to have to send a lot of people over to stop him.
Well, they've got the left side Phoenix down to about half HP already. fineokay is threatening mid. Sam rotates back over. It looks like it's a 1-3 split with a floater sort of in between in the form of Sam for Soccer going wherever they need a little bit of extra pressure to try and keep forcing up Renegades to sort of break apart. This feels like an instrumental push to me from Rival, but they've lost the Fire Giant buff. Fire Giant's coming back up in a minute, and I think that's why they're slowing down. That's pretty good for Renegades to have slowed them down there and held up. They probably, though, Myth can't come out and look at this next Fire Giant. I mean, they're down 10,000, 11,000 gold. Would you come out and defend here?
No. I would definitely be thinking about the next game, and then I would realize there isn't a next game, and I'd get a little bit sullen about that. But in all reality, Renegades' entire plan from here on out is to play around their Phoenix, and it's sad to say that they aren't really favored once they do get to defending their Phoenix. So maybe if I am Renegades in that frustration point mindset, I would move out and try and defend this Fire Giant and go for the cheeky play that Team Rival isn't expecting. So whether or not Team Rival dedicates some time to getting some ward coverage around this fire, let them stop that from happening, Renegades could potentially move in and steal it. However, it is not the favored play. There's really no favored play at this point. The interaction point, as you like to say, was a lot earlier.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for them to defend. Look at this Ullr build from PandaCat, though. I feel like this is a build right after your own heart, Mifflin. It's like purely ability-based focused. All the pin items I can get except for Crusher, and then he adds the Heart Seeker on the back end of it. If Ullr's hitting you with an Axe 3-1 combo, I don't see a world where you make it out of it.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. Once that Heartseeker comes online for Ullr, it's gonna be enough damage to kill you, especially considering he elects not to go even a lick of lifesteal. That's just disrespectful. I mean, everyone needs a little bit of sustain, but not
He's got it in
PandaCat.
the Axe stance, right? Yeah,
just
fine.
a little bit on that Axe stance. How often are you gonna be auto-attacking enemies in Axe stance? I'd say just about never. So that's out of combat healing that he's got. But so far, it's been working out just well for him. 2-0-2, no sustain, no defense. Doesn't matter. He can't be put in the ground. PandaCat's sitting comfortable.
Yeah, he has been very, very comfortable here throughout this game. And really, all of Rival, I wouldn't even say they've executed quite as clean as we've seen in the past, though it has been good. But Renegades get aggressive. The two-man blink from Jake and SOT. They don't find a lot, though. Now, SoloOrTroll is stuck on an island, has to use the Lawbringer to reposition. Meanwhile, fineokay is threatening the Phoenix and right all by himself. Lasbra comes over to contest, but Awesome Jake gets gobbled up by the Kraken. Meanwhile, Fine burns down the Phoenix in right. It's disaster now for Renegades. They've only got 4 members trying to defend. Venenu is too low. They're going to lose the mid-Phoenix here as well, as in comes SoloOrTroll. Good use of the portal, but Lasbra ends up getting caught, takes a ton of damage. SoloOrTroll brings CaptainTwig back in. That's actually a masterful play from him on the tier using those portals, but is it going to be enough?
SOT is playing out of his mind on this defense. The mobility he's making use of through these Janus portals completely shifting the fight, but it's not quite enough. He loses his life. BaRRaCCuDDa's dead as well. Lasbra, no ultimate available, and Venenu's playing Janus. So I imagine this Titan's going to fall.
Yeah, not even going to assess the current state of his kit. Just going to point out that he's still Janus, and there's not a lot that could happen there from him. So the left side Phoenix, the only one standing, only Lasbra and Venenu to play defense. And even without Twig, Team Rival had plenty of DPS. Awesome Jake is back up. It's a 3-man defense from Renegades, and that's enough for Rival to not want to force the issue. They're just going to fall back, spend some of this money they just earned, and then re-siege, knowing they're in such a favored state at this point. But Myth, what went so wrong on that base defense for Renegades?
They immediately got split up, right? The defense starts when SOT blinks past and he tries to find that engagement outside of the Phoenix, which I do enjoy that call. Knowing that if they do move into the Phoenix, Team Rival that is, that they can burn it so quickly, so SOT tries his best to keep them out. Unfortunately, while he's diving, Rival's diving the rest of his team, and with the deficit that they're at, SOT isn't quite able to match the aggression of 3 members of Team Rival. so he doesn't quite get the picks that he needs, but he does slow down the game enough. But after that, I mean, it's just raw damage and numbers that Rival had in their favor. Just able to move in, do whatever they want, anywhere they want, as well as Camazotz being left alone over to split push that Phoenix. I mean, yeah, you sent Lasbra over there, but that is a solo lane Camazotz. He's too tanky. Lasbra's not going to stop him.
Yeah, my man's been fighting tier all game. I doubt he cares much about this Serqet. PandaCat gets the kill on the Lasbra. Sam uses the feather step, does end up getting blown up, but CaptainTwig gets the return kill. It's a double now for PandaCat. No lifesteal, no problem. Leaps over the damage, even avoids the Kraken, and finds the turnaround. That's a triple kill for PandaCat. Put some respect on my man's name in the Hunter role. That's the game as well. Renegades end up going down, and Rival have returned to form.
Yeah, no lifesteal, by the way. This PandaCat just really just showing some alpha Chad dominance. He didn't need it. We don't need sustain. I don't need tankiness. I'm just going to put you in the dirt. And he does. Triple kill for him. The Titan falls. I mean, what a commanding performance we saw today.
Yeah, I want to be like PandaCat when I grow up, man. This dude's awesome, isn't he? I mean, what a play on the Ullr that he just made there on that in that last fight. And I think likely they seal the game there either way, right? I don't think they need PandaCat to finish off the triple kill there in order to end that game. But just what a play to put on from him to kind of shut down Renegades after a really shaky game number one. But I think that this is what the elite teams do, Mifflin. Even when they're not playing clean, they find ways to win. That's what Rival did here. Sorry, I'm not going to be throwing it back to you because I just got word that the desk is ready, Miff. Sorry, bud. Let's get it back over to them to break it down.
That's right, ready we are to break down our second and final set of the day. And I kind of want to piggyback off of what Finch said there. The elite teams will find a way to get it done. And in game one, that's just biding your time. Rival wait for the Renegades to slip up and then take the win. But this time around, game two, I think that is clinical from Rival from top to bottom, and that is the form we expected to see from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, from minute one, they're just aggressive. They were in their jungle. It never felt like Renegades actually had a full control of their own jungle. It was Sam for Soccer hanging out over there, and maybe you could get away with taking a buff or two, but for the most part, he was super aggressive there. That aggression turns into a double kill for first and second blood. Renegades stay alive with a little bit of a Gold Fury. But, man, my mind, ignore the first however many minutes of that. I'm going to look at strictly PandaCat and the last, 30 seconds of the game, because that was one of the nuttiest exchanges I have seen from a Hunter, with no lifesteal to really keep him going. And it's just so great because, maybe 10 minutes ago, I think I heard Mifflin saying, like, how many times are you going to see an Ullr attack someone in axe stance to use that lifesteal? And I think we got to see it, but it should not happen often. And honestly, unless you are, like, PandaCat level player, I don't think you're going to find yourself in that kind of position at all, ever.
I agree. Not often you see a lifesteal-less build, but PandaCat makes it work. Triple kill down the run there, and I think it is worth mentioning, post-stat screen, that PBM had more damage than Lasbra, Venenu, and Awesome Jake, and maybe that's a byproduct of just the way this game went. Maybe that's a byproduct of PBM playing aggressively on that Artio, but what a play to look at there from PandaCat. The obvious next question is, does this mean that Rival are back in form?
I think game one maybe shines a light. Rival looked good throughout a lot of this. There were some iffy mistakes maybe in game one that helped get Renegades ahead. But honestly, I'm looking at Renegades like, I guess as an opposite of your question, is that Renegades are looking a lot better than this team has looked in the past. So they are a threat. Even though this was a 2-0, you have to be aware of them. They're not just going to fall off the radar. So you have to keep your eyes open on the Renegades. But our Rival back, I would argue, yes. That was like the most insane last 3 minutes. Felt like old Rival at all.
Well, Goremizer says yes, Rival are back. But let's hear what fineokay has to think after getting Rival's first win in Season 7 of the SPL.
What's up, fineokay? Congrats on the big win, my man. The first thing I got to ask is, after the way that Week 1 ended up starting, how does it feel to kind of just get this one on the board, especially in Game 2, with it feeling like you guys playing back up to that Rival standard?
Well, I don't exactly agree with that last part, but I think that I think it just feels good to get a win just to start off this season. It's been a while since we actually played SPL. It's basically 6 months with everything that's happened and the situation. So it's going to be a rough start no matter what, I think, for every team, and especially the teams that are new and are trying to get things like worked out as far as their squad. But it feels feels good to get a win on the Renegades, and I think that they're going to be a pretty good team. I think people are kind of underestimating them, but they have a lot of good players and a lot of things that I think they can surprise people with. So.
Yeah, I agree. They may be 0-4, but I think every one of those games has been close, like without a doubt. And speaking of maybe not being quite a bit the standard that you all wanted, Game 1 was a bit rough, man. Talk to me a bit about how Game 1 ends up going and how you all found a way to finally close that game back out and still get the win. I mean, that push they made at the end of the game, I don't think I can figure that one out. What were you all thinking when they made that siege?
I think they just thought that their Fire Giant fight wasn't amazing. Like, it was really hard for them to get anything done with how much we were able to like zone and kind of stall them. Especially because like they weren't going to be able to kill me in my ult if anyone was helping me. So I think that's what they were going for. I mean, it's easy to say that it was a really bad call because it didn't work out, but who knows if it was better than the Fire Giant. And then as far as like our own play, I think we've been playing like pretty bad when it actually comes to game day. Our scrims have been really, really, really good, and maybe that's our downfall for right now. But yeah, I just feel like we've been playing really sloppy, especially around objectives. And I think that we just need to like acclimate ourselves, because one of the most important people at an objective is the mid laner for burst. And a lot of the mages right now aren't very like burst oriented. So it's kind of hard to secure objectives, but I think we're just going to get better at it with time, and we're just kind of all over the place right now, but it's all right.
Well, I know the play wasn't quite where you wanted it, fine, okay, but I still get hyped up every time you guys hit the battleground, so I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me, man. Good luck in the rest of your matches, and I'm going to get it back over to the desk so they can close this day out.
Thank you, Finch, and of course, thank you, fineokay, for standing by with us after their win here today. And Gore, we think that the rival back in form, but fineokay apparently thinks that rival still has some room to grow.
He just stole a Fire Giant 2 games ago. Like, I don't know what to go. I mean, he's been playing really well. The team's playing well. But I will tell you, more than anyone, I think having somewhere where you think there is a place to grow, it's always where you want to be, right? You never want to think you're on top of the world. You always have somewhere to go next. And so I like that rival are in that mentality, because otherwise you get complacent, you start losing these games. And I like the way you worded it. I mean, we had a abnormally long off season for this season, I guess, going into it between Season 6 and Season 7, making things a little more difficult for these teams because they haven't gotten to play at this level. And I will say he probably just jinxed himself because he said that scrims are going well, and we know what that tends to like lean to as we go forward with it. But that was a really good way to close out that set, a really solid way for that second game to go. I think if there is a better rival out there in the next few weeks, everyone should be scared.
That's right, and here are the standings reflected after day 1 of week 2. Radiance all the way at the top. They grab themselves a win over E-United, who fall to that 50%. Rival bump up to that 50%, and Renegades still searching for that first win. Pittsburgh Knights and Obey Alliance, they'll each play later this week in order to get that second game on the board. Anything jump out at you, though, Gore Miser? I mean, those are 2 games in. Anyone surprise you where they stand?
Radiance is actually kind of surprising me, and it's not just the fact that they are up at the top right now. Granted, they've been one of the few teams to be able to come through and get that second win, so we'll have to see how it shakes out at the end of this week, but the fact that they've done so pretty cleanly, I mean, being able to take 2-0 victories against a lot of these teams that admittedly it feels like should be giving them more trouble, that you maybe expect a 2-1 and them just being able to control it and cinch it away from these other top teams. It's bringing them to the top, not just in standings, but I think appropriately, as people in the in-game client were voting, as people in chat have been saying, like, Radiance has escalated to the top. I am a little scared for Obey, who have to play them on Sunday. That is not going to be an easy match.
Yeah, Radiance may be the team to beat here. Well, the 4 teams that did not play today will be in action tomorrow. SSG versus Sanguine open up the day for us tomorrow, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Pittsburgh Knights, Obey Alliance will immediately follow that one up. SSG and Sanguine, Gore, I think that's going to be a pretty fun one as well. SSG, a team that's starting to look good, and Sanguine, a team that a lot of people I don't think they know yet how confident they should be in these guys, but they are a team that has come to play.
If there's anything Sanguine have, it is a wave of fans behind them, right? I think tomorrow might be a little eye-opening because SSG, as we have pointed out in the past, and I think it bears worth mentioning every time, is a behemoth of a team to take on and to try and take down. Based on what I saw against Obey last week for Sanguine, there was a couple of things they need to work on to be able to beat SSG, but I guess tomorrow's the proving ground. Tomorrow's the day they can show what they have.
It's time to get some momentum rolling for these teams, but that's all we've got for you on day number 1 of week number 2 of the SPL. Make sure to tune back in tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as we kick off day 2 of week 2 of the SPL. But for myself, Gore, Miser, everyone back in production, and our chair sponsor, Maxonomic, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.